Live here.
Live!
But we don't have to necessarily know what that means.
What's the someday of blank?
I don't
there's
know
a
that we
reason
want-
this story happens now.
Ladies and gentlemen, the movie writes itself. Ooh. Well,
I'm still streaming. How do I stop streaming? No!
hello.
Hello.
You all right?
I've just been dealing with a screaming child for the last half an hour.
Yikes.
It's been very difficult. And I think, but a shell of the man I once was.
Well,
If you're a parent and you have considered getting Minecraft for your children, also consider don't. Because it is the cause of 90% of the arguments and fights between my children.
There was a thing that I read years ago about Minecraft.
It's like crack. It lights up the same part of your brain as crack. Yeah, I remember read the same thing.
Yeah.
It's tough because it's...
You read the same thing, but you gave the crack to your kid.
But it's interesting because it's at the same time, I genuinely feel like it's immensely educational.
Really?
And it's like Lego. Like they get the same kick out of it as like Lego. And different blocks do different things, and they begin to understand like causality of things, and it's got a real kind of fantasy element to it. But it also does a thing to their brain that when you turn it off, when you say you can't do this, or in this particular case, my youngest wants to play, and my eldest is playing with friends online and chatting, and my friend had moved away, and it just makes this thing go Gah! And they go crazy. It's really tough.
Weird. Yeah, because they don't do that with Lego.
They don't do that with Lego. That's exactly right. They do not do that with Lego. That's exactly right.
It doesn't do this. There's something else going on there chemically.
The screen,
But
it is. Minecraft is the highest grossing selling video game of all time. It's most popular
because it's crack.
Because they infuse it with crack.
I mean, like, wouldn't it be crazy if we discovered later that there was subliminal messaging going on behind the screen?
It's that episode of Star Trek.
We realized that they were brainwashing our children.
Well, it's the classic episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where they all start playing this game, and the game gives you a little dopamine hit whenever you do it, and ultimately everyone on board starts playing it, gets completely addicted to it, except for I think like Wesley and maybe Data gets disabled early on because they know that the machine knows that he won't get addicted to it. And Wesley's the only one who isn't doing it. Or Dr. Crusher. It's either Dr. Crusher or Wesley. But basically, it's an alien intelligence that's like got this game to like kind of make you do shit.
I'm telling you, dude, they're doing it to your kids.
Yeah, totally. They're
going to discover that the inventors of Minecraft have been brainwashing children.
Yeah, totally.
So to start our conversation today, we got a very lovely comment on one of our other videos and question. And I replied and said, we'll talk about that today.
I missed it.
And the question was, it was quite a nice comment. So you should go back and read it. But the question part of the comment was, can we discuss when or how to take a break from a screenplay or stop writing a screenplay because it's hard to try and get a screenplay to be perfect, but also build up a portfolio at the same time. And it's a really good question.
It is a good question. Yeah.
When you're starting out, I know I suffered from this. When you're starting out, you do tend to focus all of your energy on one script.
Yeah,
and
we did, didn't we? For years, it was Silver
Fox. Time.
Yeah.
And then even the ones after, there's a tendency to want to like really not let go, make it perfect. And I think that here's the thing: you want the best script that you can do. And not everyone writes fast. And if it takes you a long time and you're working support jobs and you're only able to do an hour every so often, it might take a really long time on one script.
Yeah.
I'm a believer personally that it is better to have one really great script than 5
Yeah, I
like,
agree. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
And also, but then again, the other, like, does it have to be extremes? You know, could it be
No.
like it's great? Of course, it's really good to have one really, really, really excellent script. It really is. And that becomes, I think, a calling card. But would it be good to have 3 very good scripts? You know, it's one of those things.
I guess it depends on your philosophy in terms of, like, I don't know. I personally don't like the idea of ever sending a script out to market that you don't think is your very best work.
Yeah, I hear that.
So,
I hear that.
you
Yeah, I
know,
do. Yeah,
if
I
you're
agree.
like, oh well, I can do one rewrite on this, but I don't really have. Then I'm just going to
Yeah.
move on, and it is what it
Yeah,
is.
I feel like
Then,
you've called.
I don't know.
I feel like you've called me out on that before when I've gone like, this scene's good enough, and you're like, no, good enough isn't okay. Like it
Yeah.
needs to be the best version it can be, and I think there's benefit in that, and also, you know, per the nature of the question, at what point do you go, you know what, I actually need to put this down?
And
I
that
mean,
is
interesting. I've been listening to and reading Stephen King's autobiography. Which one's when you write it yourself?
Autobiography, yeah.
But also, it really is talking about his life in writing, and it's great. If you haven't read Stephen King on writing, it's just excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to it, and he narrates it, and it's just wonderful. But one of the things that he does a lot of the time is he just puts something down, puts it in a drawer, and comes back to it at some point later. And it's interesting because what did we have recently whereby we had put a script down for a little while and we came back to it and we went, oh,
yeah,
having the time and distance away from that has really helped.
A couple of things.
It's helped illuminate 2 things. It's interesting. It highlights or highlighted for me what was good about the script.
Right.
And what I still enjoyed.
Right.
And also I could see, with the benefit of perspective and not being in it, to go, this is the area where it needs improving.
Right.
I'm absolutely guilty in several instances of feeling that something was ready before it was ready.
Yeah, but I agree with the idea of not spending your life perfecting that one script.
Yes.
And I think a really good example of that for us was the first script that we ever wrote together, which is a script called Silver Fox. And it was a script that I had actually started originally and had spent a long time writing. I mean, at least a year. I was working 2 support jobs at the time. And then Jake and I started working together. And the thing we decided to do was do a rewrite on that script. And then we worked on that script for at least a year, at least close to it, various drafts. We did multiple things on it. And I do think there is a point where you have to recognize, are you at the place in your life, your writer's journey as a creative writer, to get that script to its best place? Is that your best work, or are you just being overly critical? And then if it's not your best work yet, and you've been working on it for a year, put it down.
Yeah.
Because you can, I mean, this is one of those scripts that we have actually come back to now, 11 years later, 14 years later.
Yeah, 14 years later.
And it was a really interesting thing to look at it and go, wow, like nobody's ever seen this script. It was, we didn't even have reps at the time.
No.
But you go, you know what? The idea was really good. There was some really cool stuff here.
Yeah.
Now that we are 14 years further into our writing career and our craft, we could actually see how we could make this a really cool movie. And so I don't think you should be afraid to say, you know, maybe this isn't the one, and keep going. And, I know it can be frustrating. I know we have gotten frustrated at times recently whereby we had started scripts and then stopped them because we got stuck.
Yep.
And it can be frustrating to go, well, I didn't actually finish that.
Yeah, and it's a very complex and convoluted question as well, because you kind of go, at what point is it ready? At what point do you go?
It's ready when you feel it is the best that you can do. That's when it's ready.
Sure.
When you read it and you go, yeah, this is the best.
I would add that having 5 to 6 weeks away from a script, away from a project, and then reading it after that and going and asking yourself that question then is the best. Or maybe it's a month, whatever it is, a period of time when you can kind of forget about it and maybe even work on something else for a while. Because when you're in it, and even if you're freshly in it, I think perspective can be very difficult. We had an experience recently where we went and revisited a script, and I was like, I don't think, as I read it, I didn't think it was the best it could have been. And at the time, I didn't feel that. I was all like, yes, it's ready. Let's go. Let's get it out there, etc. And as I reread it, I went, this is a project we've been developing with a producer, to be clear.
I think that look, I don't think that every project you're going to have the luxury of putting something down for a month and coming back to it. It all depends on the situation.
If it's a paid gig,
if
you
it's
might
a
not.
job and you have a 3-month deadline,
Very
you
valid.
don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
And you will ultimately have to submit a draft, but you can go over your deadline a little bit if you think you can still make it better and better.
And also adding into it perspectives of other people.
Yeah, perspectives of other people, but I genuinely think that, like, all of those are factors that you can look at. You go, is this the script the best it can be now, today? Have I done everything that I can at this moment? And maybe that means it's not even done. Maybe that means I'm somewhere in the middle of Act 2 and I go, I have done everything I can with this script today, and it's time to put it down for however long it might be, and then come back to it another time. It doesn't mean that the idea is bad. It doesn't mean the writing that you've done up until that point is bad.
Yeah.
It just means you have to just be honest with yourself and go, can this be better? Or have I gotten as far as I can get with where I am as a writer? I genuinely feel like, the work that we submit, I would say 95% of the time, or send out, that we feel, or at least I feel,
in that moment,
is the best that it can be at that time. Now, here's the thing about movies and writing. It's never done.
Well, that's what we were saying the other day, wasn't it? Right. It's like movies aren't ever finished, they're abandoned.
Yeah. And so if you are writing a script and you feel like it's the best it can be at that moment, and you also feel that it's the best that you can do as a writer at that point in your life, then great.
Yeah.
Send it out there.
Okay.
If you feel like you're stuck and you are having a writer's block moment, or if you are just like, I know there's something here, but it's just not what it could be, then put it down. I think that we all have to realize that that writing, like any other art or craft, is something that you get better and better and better at. The writer that we are today collectively is a very different writer than the writer that we were 14 years ago. And you'll never have the opportunity to put every single project down and wait 14 years and read it again. So I feel like it's a very personal question. You need to ask yourself, and you you also, I think, do need to look at the fact, like, if you've been working on something, and I won't use years or months, but think about hours. Think about if you've put in, I would say what, like
32 hours into a project and you still can't get out of Act 1.
2 hours. I mean, like, if you've put in like 300 hours, and that might be a whole year for you, if that's all you.
It might be. Yeah, it
But
might
if you
be.
put in 300 hours into a script and it's just not working, you probably need some space from it. You probably, I mean, that's what 300 hours is like.
I mean, if you
6 weeks or so, right?
Sure,
Of 6 full working weeks. And actually, it's probably more like 10. It's like 10 weeks of work. I think if we were writing a spec and we were 10 weeks in and we were like, fuck.
Still at the end of it, still not feeling it. Maybe just go, let's put that down and come back.
There, we'd go, you know what? Let's not just keep trudging through the mud.
Yeah.
Let's take some distance from it, and everybody has a different, like, we're lucky enough to be able to do this full time. And so, 300 hours is, 8 to 10 weeks or whatever, for us.
Sure. Yeah.
And sometimes you won't even get there. I'm talking about when you're so passionate about something that you just want to keep going and keep going and keep going, but you're never getting there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. You gotta, and I do think there's constantly a reassessment. Like, let's say you've gotten to that 300 hours or whatever it is, and you have a full draft, and you're like, it's still not where it needs to be, but I know where it could be, and I know I can get it there. Well, then fucking get it there.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, even if it takes you another 300 hours.
Right.
But if you go, I think it's there, I'm not really sure, and I feel like new writers and myself included, there's this desire to just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and sometimes it's almost out of an insecurity that you're not ready to share it, so you're just going to keep rewriting it and keep rewriting it, and I don't think I'm capable perhaps of making it the best that it can be. And it really is about self-reflection and about going, where am I as a writer?
Yeah, today? Totally. Yeah, indeed.
So that's
good.
I hope that answers that question. And I know that it's
a difficult question.
Yeah,
it's difficult emotionally, isn't it? It's
when do you put something down that you love?
Down, yeah.
I mean, there's different things too, isn't there? Like when you're told no, it might be a good time to put something down, and yet we haven't always.
And again, right? You look at examples of the amount of times people were told no about something.
Well, Winter's Night, we were told no, and we wrote it anyway, and we sold it for 7 figures.
Yeah. But again, like I even look at examples like famously J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter. The amount of rejection she got for that manuscript, was it like 25, 30? Like it's huge.
Yeah.
And then, but she believed in it so much that she knew it was the best it was going to be for that point. Yeah. Undoubtedly reworked it with an editor, but it was, I believe in this so much, and viewed it as good enough.
I guess, the context of the question that was being asked is, how do you build out a portfolio and do the best work that you can? And I guess here's a second answer to that question.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. But you and I, Jake and I, have never really had a portfolio. Every script we've written has been the next script that we've either sold or tried to sell and thus failed.
Yeah.
If we finished it, we have tried and we have started specs. We have then gone.
Yeah. We have one script in our portfolio that was this. I mean, I would say we have 3 scripts in our portfolio that
they're not finished.
Well, one was the one we're working with, the one we developed when we just signed shopping agreement for, that was an old script. Now, I guess that had gone out on sale.
Yeah. I mean, look, a portfolio as a new writer is very different than
It is.
you've got a trunk of old scripts that never went anywhere.
Right.
That's not a portfolio.
Yeah, sure. No, I hear
I'm
you.
talking about, like, if you're asking about how many scripts should I have in order to enter the business, or how much do I need in order to get a manager, or how much do I need in order to be considered, a professional screenwriter.
Well, how many do you think that is?
I mean, honestly, I think it's one good one.
One good one, and at least
I sold the first script I ever wrote.
Yeah.
It was one script, and it got made into a movie. I felt like I was a screenwriter at that point. I didn't need to have 5 scripts under my belt. Sure. And the next script that I wrote, I intended to sell. It didn't sell, but the intention, I never wrote for samples. And I still, I'm very vocal about this, and some people would disagree with me. I don't believe in writing samples.
Yes.
I don't believe it. I think it's crazy. I believe that you should, every single story, if you believe in a story well enough to sit down and do 300 hours of writing on it,
I guess my question is do people view things as samples?
Yeah.
Maybe like, for example, we wrote The Princess, and our manager was like, we'll try and sell it. If it doesn't sell, it'll be a really good sample.
Well, but that's not what he originally said. He was like, I don't know where it would sell, but it'll be a really good sample. Sure. Had we gone into writing it as just I wouldn't have started writing that with the belief that, it'll just be a good sample.
No.
We wrote that to sell it, and we just didn't agree with his thought process.
Yes.
But I have seen, whether it's been on Screenwriter Twitter, or whether it's been in other forums, or whether it's been people asking questions of me personally about what's a good sample, or what do you should I write a sample? Like, I just don't think that approaching a project with the mindset that this isn't to sell, it's just to show how good of a writer I am. It's like, why would you do that? And so I guess the idea of like building a portfolio, to me, that just means that you've written the best script that you can, and that you're still attempting to get representation. You're attempting to get it into the right hands of a producer, and you now have moved on to your next script.
Yeah, sure.
But if every script you write, you then...
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because, it's almost like in TV, and you hear varying opinions, and it swings one way and then swings back the other way about writing a spec of an existing television show.
I think it's gone away now, though.
Well, it's funny because recently talk was about it coming back, and that people saying, as a showrunner, I want to see if I'm going to hire you on as staff that you can write in a pre-existing voice for a pre-existing character. Now that is a writing sample.
Really specific, though, isn't it? That's not writing a screenplay.
Nope.
And that's writing to get on staff.
Yes.
And I think that's like a resume for a job in a way. It's like, when my sister's in fashion, and when she goes in to get a job, she has to present a portfolio that is essentially, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
That isn't going to be what she then makes when she starts her new job,
of course,
but it's an example of what she can do.
Absolutely.
Now, in TV, I mean, for a while, and it was you write your own original pilot, and then that is your sample. And so you have both. You can, one, try and go out and sell that one day, and two, you can try and use that to get staffed on a job. I'd be curious if there are any showrunners out there, and maybe we'll ask some people that we know, if they prefer to read a pilot, or if they prefer to read a spec TV episode. But for the purpose of screenwriting, which is what we're here to do, at least right now, I think that, sample scripts are scripts that tried that could have sold but didn't, and are really good. And and a sample script really the best sample script is the script that did sell. So Winter's Night, which was our biggest sale, is still our sample script.
It is.
To this day. Now the Princess is. I mean,
Now
actually,
the Princess,
it's changed.
Yeah.
Because now the
It
Princess
also depends as well.
made.
Yeah, on what
Depends on what.
Exactly.
But like, we have scripts that maybe weren't as good, but we tried to sell all of them, and they didn't sell.
Yeah.
And then they go in the quote portfolio, and that's what we're talking about in terms of this. We have a script we can't talk about right now, which is an old one that we're breathing new life into. That I feel like is a different. That's not I put it down or I wrote this to be part of my portfolio.
Sure.
That's we went out, we gave it the best shot that we could. It didn't sell, so it's in the filing cabinet.
It's in the filing cabinet. And if anyone says, "Hey, if you got $180 million fantasy movie,"
we wrote a movie for Sony. Yes. We wrote a movie for Sony called The Wells Initiative, and there's press about it, and it was an origin story of kind of how H.G. Wells wrote his novels, and the fantasy of it all was that he actually lived through events that inspired them, and it was this great fun action adventure sci-fi, and we wrote it for Sony, and we had it was a wonderful producer, Carter Swan, who was producing it for us. And when that didn't move forward for various reasons, as scripts do, he was like, one day I'm going to be in a room and someone is going to say, I've always wanted to do something about H.G. Wells. And that's when I'm going to pull this script out and go, boom, I've got one.
Totally.
And that is a sample for that specific thing. Yeah. Now, sometimes we've gone out for perhaps like something that is the same type of feeling, and we've sent that as a sample. But,
I love that script.
Anyway, we're off the question at this point, but the idea basically of a portfolio, and the reason I was talking about it was, I don't think that you should, and this is just
think about a script.
I don't think you should write for a portfolio. I think you should write to get a movie made, and if that movie doesn't get made, then add that to your portfolio.
Yeah, I concur.
Yes. In fact, we are writing this spec right now, not just for you to enjoy it. We want to sell it. We want the movie to be made. I mean, ultimately, that's the end goal. It's not even the sale. It's the actual making of a movie.
Indeed.
So, speaking of which, I think we need to turn to
our movie.
Our movie, yeah.
Yeah. So we've, over the last day, we didn't get a ton of new material out into our outline yesterday because we were talking about this kind of, again, slightly we were just kind of figuring out what Act 2 looks like. Are there any changes to be made in?
We were working back on our scratch document, actually.
Yeah.
And we had started to talk through Sam and a change that we wanted to make to her.
Yeah.
And it was large, and so it was an important conversation to have about Act 2 as we go into outlining Act 2, which I think today we will start, as I titled this episode, to trudge through the bog of the eternal Act 2. But
nice reference, nice never-ending story reference. Is it Never-Ending Story?
Yeah,
it's Labyrinth.
No, it's Labyrinth. Yes, no, yeah, it was Labyrinth. Anyway, the thing that we ultimately came up with is that Sam is going to start to change.
Yeah,
and that this trigger is what happened. That the appearance of the Mark of Cain was triggered by the events of her family dying. And that like Neo, it's not that necessarily her actions that cause her to become the Antichrist. she inside of her has the potential to be that
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
and that she is starting to change.
Yes.
Like we talked about Wolf, for example,
Yeah, sure,
or a
yeah.
zombie,
Yeah,
or
sure.
something like that.
Yeah.
And that in this case, the demonic energy is starting to grow and build inside of her, and that visually the mark of Cain is going to be the thing that starts to symbolically show that growth. But also we want to see, like, you know, like dark circles starting to form around her eyes, or like her behavior, her dialogue getting more aggressive and more violent, her instincts to actually hurt someone in a confrontation instead of perhaps talking it through. I feel like we want to watch her over the course of Act 2 go through this change, so that really that's kind of going to be the growth of her character, that her character arc, essentially, from someone who had kind of given up on life, and then ultimately at the end realizes that she almost essentially turned into this thing, and that she actually wants to be a better person now. Which I will say, the whole NA meeting may contradict that. We'll have to reassess after we
might have to reassess that.
Does that fuck with that arc? Maybe she's starting too soon to want change.
Right.
But that being said, we also talked about the midpoint. And we talked a lot about Terminator and Midnight Run, and talking about how actually, you know, this is going to be a continuing chase style movie, but unlike those, like Terminator is really a character changed midpoint. But Midnight Run also was we're not going, I'm not going to just take you back midpoint. It was now we are going to kind of fend off
what we can to take
together. And in ours, we had come up with the idea that what if in the first half of Act 2 they are truly on the run and need to figure out how to reverse this. I'll call it a spell, but it's really obviously
but we know what we mean.
But reverse the spell, and that the midpoint is the thing that causes us to realize, oh, it can be reversed if we go here.
Yes,
and then we continue that journey instead of. It gives us a new direction. Now we were running, and now we have a specific goal.
And so it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, like we were saying the other day, it's simple from this point. While there are going to be moments of understanding the logic of things and why they decide to do certain things and why certain things are happening. And, you know, if we go to Stonehenge, that's the why we can figure out how to reverse this or whatever. It remains simple. We were doing this, but now we're doing that. And there may be difficulties in doing that. Well, how are we going to get to Stonehenge? We've got to get on an airplane. And, well, we haven't got any passports. Okay, well, I know a guy. Whatever it is, you know, it's just going to be the obstacles in terms of getting to that objective. And that makes the movie, and that makes the story from that point onwards. So they go to see the passport guy. The passport guy's, you know, shut for lunch. Oh, man, we've got to sit around and wait here. Who turns up? The demons, you know? As we said, the movie essentially writes itself.
There you go. Oh boy! So, what
best obstacle ever? Closed for lunch.
Closed for lunch. So if we break this down into sequences, which we do sometimes, and.
So I made myself laugh there because I'm now playing all the moments in different movies where that would have been really effective. We have to go and see the Oracle. She is the one we need. They get there and it says closed for lunch, and then the agents turn up.
Closed for lunch.
Sorry, continue, Ben. I'm just doing that thing I do where I distract you by making stupid jokes, and you go, "You're not helping, Jake."
You're not helping, Jake. So, well, we said we'd let everybody into our process. So here we go.
This is what it looks like. This is really what it looks like.
So we're breaking this down into sequences, and we're coming out of Act 1, and our Act 1, we have this big fight with the demons, and we escape, and we throw Sam into the trunk of our car, and we get the fuck out of there, and it's Hank, and it's Charlize, and they're in an uneasy alliance. They don't necessarily trust each other, but they clearly are on the same side in terms of who's fighting the demons.
Yeah.
And so we then... where do we go?
Where do we go then?
What is the first scene? I mean, what is the? I guess it's the.
Okay, so
how are we going to move the plot forward or the character forward, right?
Absolutely. So Sam doesn't know what the fuck is going on. She just knows
she's
people
in the trunk of the car.
People turned up at her house. They were going to kill her. Then they weren't going to kill her. Then was that?
She gets knocked out.
Yeah, totally. So she needs to have, at some point in sequence 3 in 2.1, I think needs to learn, as do we, the audience, what's really going on here. Because we, the audience, don't actually know that Sam's the Antichrist.
It's the exposition in the car scene from Terminator. It's Kyle Reese telling her, here's what's going on.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin.
Comfortably.
Yeah.
Now, I've pitched out this kind of the old man moment a few times. Yes. But actually, for the purpose of this, something like that could work nicely. I also feel like I don't feel like there's quite as much I'll say urgency in this moment, in this scene, as there was in the Terminator, for us to have to actually do this in the car while we're driving, especially since she was knocked out. So now we could have thrown her in the back and she could like come to as we're driving.
Yeah.
And we could do it they literally did it in the midst of a chase. He gives her, and then they park in the parking garage and he continues.
Yes.
But like that's like the sequence where like we get the full lowdown. So this is also traditionally the time in a movie where you would start to gain allies if you want to have any allies. Now the Terminator, there are none. They don't really gain any allies. It is what it is. But in Terminator 2, they do. It is that classic kind of, that's the whole,
Luke Skywalker
Campbell
goes to Mos Eisley, recruits,
just Campbell-esque structure,
Yeah.
I don't know if we need any more characters in this.
I don't know if we need any more characters in this either. I would be okay not.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So then what we really are talking about is us basically figuring out not only what's going on, because even Hank doesn't none of them fully understand what's happening there. Yeah. Charlize has the most knowledge, but she doesn't know who Hank is. And so there is a bit of what's going on here. Now, there could be a really cool scene. So let's say Sam is knocked out. Let's say the next scene is Sam's in the back of the car, still passed out. We've seen Hank, throw her over, or actually maybe it's Charlize because she's got demon strength, throw her over her shoulder, toss her into the back of the car. They're driving away. Hank's driving like crazy. He manages to, I don't even know if we wrote the car chase yet, but he manages to lose the Zod and the others.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the beat of, who the fuck are you?
Yeah.
Now, how much of that conversation have they had? Because we actually do have a who are you and who are you moment before Zod shows up. So maybe we don't need it.
Yeah.
In this.
It's more Sam that needs to be having this than anyone else. And what the fuck is going on and why I'm trying to
right.
What the fuck is going on?
It might be the two of them debating over what to do next.
Totally. I think that's interesting. They are debating over what to do next in the car. Maybe they pull into fucking gas stations somewhere in Bumblefuck, Oregon, and they're arguing over what to do. Then suddenly, bang, bang, bang! Sam wakes up in the trunk, and it's like, well, she's awake.
Right.
What are we going to do? We're going to go out again, or are we going to talk to her?
Maybe they're arguing over whether they kill her or not.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think
so. That's the so.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
It's like maybe the answer. Maybe there's something funny. Like the answer is, let's decide when we open the trunk.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. She might be all, exorcist woman,
right?
Child from that. But I think that's the right shape of 2.1. I think it is car chase into 2.1, a debate amongst them as to what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. Sam wakes up and they explain what the hell is going on.
Right. So then the second sequence is usually where we would probably have another set piece. We're leading towards the midpoint, as we talked about in whether it was Fast and the Furious or I forget what the other movie was that you referenced. Yeah. We were talking through Terminator. There's usually that 2.1 set piece.
Yeah. But that can be at the midpoint.
It can be at the midpoint, or it can be just before the midpoint.
Yeah.
It can lead you into the midpoint. It can, but it's somewhere in that 2.2 as what we call 2.2 section. Sure. I'm not sure what that is yet. So let's just focus on 2.1 for right now.
Yeah.
And write down some of these brilliant,
some of where we are with it. Yeah.
Brilliant moments. So why don't you give the spiel?
Follow me on Twitter. He's at Ben_Lustig. I'm at Jake Thornton. Wonder if we'll move somewhere else. I mean, I was looking at Twitter today. I mean, I lost a handful of followers, but I haven't seen a map. I've seen some people leaving.
Mm-hmm.
But I have, still.
Well, how do you feel about staying?
What's that?
How do you feel about staying?
I honestly, I don't really mind. I think a social. Here's the thing. I think a social media network is a representative of what society is, and I think that goes for all the shit as well. I do agree that hate speech should be silenced and minimized. I'm staying on Twitter for the moment.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see how it goes. I'm gonna see how it goes. I know there were, on the day that Elon took back over, lots of things happened. We're going to say, oh, excellent, I can do this again. And people who had been, banned suddenly back.
Right.
Again, I don't know if banning people from social platforms is the best version either, because I actually almost think it amplifies their voices in a weird way. Everyone's then talking about it.
Sure.
I mean, if you don't like Trump, or you do like Trump, whatever, everyone still talks about Trump. Trump's still in the news. you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's like I said, I'm still on Twitter for the moment, but it's
right. Well,
it's a complex.
You can find us both on Twitter for the moment. I actually will probably be leaving Twitter, but mainly I think because I didn't really love it in the first place.
Yeah, sure.
I tried to get into it. I really did. What I really enjoy about it is the fact that there's lots of screenwriters on there, and
I like a supportive community. I think it's generally.
But I don't like the format. I mean, like, honestly, like as simple as that is, I don't. This isn't like great, and I don't quite. I don't know, like the whole thread thing, and
Leandro, who's watching, hey Leandro, talking about TikTok. Yeah, I'm on TikTok. I've been exploring TikTok as an author, and yes, you're right, it is a good place for short videos and things like that. So, but only short. I think the maximum you can do on that is 3 minutes. But I guess you could point to YouTube and go, hey, and I have done on a couple of my videos going, hey, we've got some episodes up of the show and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the suggestions from that also was in the comment was that we should be posting on Reddit.
Right.
To let people know that we're going to be having an episode or links to our
we should actually go and promote our live episode with Derek. Oh, if you don't know yet and you're watching this in the week that we're going to be doing this on Friday, the 11th, we're going to be talking to screenwriter and producer Derek Kolstad. He's the creator of the John Wick franchise and also the writer of Nobody. And did you see that John Wick's going to be in The Ballerina? That
he's going to be in it.
He's going to be in it, even if it's just a cameo. He's going to be in The Ballerina. The Ballerina is a spec. This was interesting with The Ballerina, wasn't it? It was a spec not tied to the John Wick universe at all that Lionsgate bought. And they're now going, yeah, let's just make it part of the John Wick universe.
Well, I think it's slightly more complicated because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that spec was written by the writer who ended up writing on John Wick 3.
That's right.
So I don't know, but I'm speculating that he probably, if he had written the spec ahead of time, knew and went to Lionsgate and said, so you know that character I wrote into John Wick 3 that's the ballerina? I have this other script that's about a ballerina.
Yeah. I wonder.
Or, I mean, maybe he was inspired by that character and wrote a spec on it. So I'd be curious to know, like, the order of things.
Yeah, it's
the fact that he wrote on John Wick 3
is his name.
Maybe he sold the ballerina first. And
I think that's what happened. I think he sold the ballerina to Lionsgate. They said, hey, let's roll this into the John Wick franchise, and saying, hey, seeing as we like you as a writer, do you want to come and do a rewrite on John Wick 3?
Maybe that is what happened.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, the funny thing, though, is that, Derek created the universe, and so ultimately he'll have some kind of credit on that.
He will have some kind of credit.
Especially if John's going to be in it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's based on characters by.
Indeed. It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
It's a really interesting kind of separate business topic that we
can
do another time, is talking about franchises and creating characters and how that works.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we had was a fight. Zod has a bigger crew. Sam and Hank work together to save Sam and escape. We wrote
in that one. And this is going to be the kind of bridging.
Our bridge. I think we're going into exterior Sam's apartment at this point.
Well, it's going to be, I think it's car chase, isn't it, at this moment?
Well, yes, but what we have here is that someone called the cops. They witnessed Sam's kidnapping, and now there are another obstacle. So I think what we need to have is that transition of they're escaping, and Sam is over one of their shoulders, and they come down and they get into one of their cars, and the cops see that they're throwing a body into the back seat of their car.
Yeah, sure. Trunk. Yeah.
And, like the siren, shit, let's go.
Great.
And they're probably being chased by the cops.
And Zod?
I mean, depends. Do we think, depends on what they do in that fight. That's going to come down to a much deeper description of what happens in that fight.
Yeah.
If they're able to disable and slow down Zod and the crew in a big, fun, cool way, like if they weren't demons, it'd be like, throwing in a gas canister or something to like really give us a head start. So we think we're home free, but then the cops show up and now we're being chased by the cops.
Right.
That's cool. And I'd actually think I'd prefer that, because then it doesn't feel like we're just being chased by the same person.
Sure.
And it feels like a new thing.
Right.
And now we have to ditch the car because the license plate and everything else. It creates all new obstacles, which I think is it's never bad to have more obstacles.
Absolutely right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, I think we'll go in here. We need to kind of make a note here. How do they get away?
Yeah.
And it has to be specific. And before we write that scene,
Yes.
and go into the writing phase, we're going to have to come up with that in order to make the next beat work. And it's going to probably involve, again, going into demon lore, going, what can we do?
What can they
throw
do?
down 3 demons?
Totally. Yes. But I mean, presumably those 3 demons are in a car. If that car were to crash, we would be able to get away.
But we're not in the car, we're in the apartment, and then the car, like, based on what I just spewed out for the last minute, they wouldn't be chasing us in the car.
I see what you're saying. Okay. All right.
So
okay.
Based on that, based on the look on your face, I don't know that you actually were listening to.
No, I was.
No, I was. Out all of that.
Yeah, well, no, I was. Maybe I misheard you. So, okay, because maybe I was seeing things as you were talking them, and maybe I just thought that you were saying what I was seeing.
Sometimes this happens.
Yes.
What I was saying was that it would be nice to not have Zod also be chasing them.
I see. Okay.
Because it changes who they're being chased and fighting, quote unquote.
Right.
And then it gives us a new obstacle. Because otherwise, then the cops and Zod are chasing them, and do the cops then have to respond to Zod? And this way, Zod and the crew can, quote unquote, escape without ever having been seen by the cops.
Fine.
I think it helps us, but what it needs then is a reason that that our gang are able to escape the apartment without Zod jumping out the window after them.
Right.
And so that's why I'm saying there needs to be a specific
I see what you're saying.
way for them to escape.
All right.
So Sam is being carried over the shoulder of Charlize as she and Hank rush to, should it be, I'll go to Hank's car.
Yeah, sure.
Hank's car, which is closer.
That's fine.
Or who has Hank's got a lot of cool weapons in his.
Yeah, Hank's got cool shit.
So they throw Sam in the back seat, but cops have pulled down the street. They were called. I don't know how we'll see this. This is just for the outline. They were called in. I mean, maybe we'd hear the police radio. Hey, responding to the domestic. Oh, what the hell?
Yeah.
It's just that
for sure. Yeah.
They were called in response to a complaint from the noise. And they see Sam being kidnapped. They flash the lights and siren. Oh, it should be something cool where like Hank like fires his gun and like one of those moments of holy shit, what the fuck is that? We need backup now,
Yeah.
And Charlize is like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, we can't let them catch us. And she's like, now we're gonna have like 20 of them on our backs. Idiot. I want them to have this like banter.
Yeah, I agree.
With them bantering all the time.
For sure.
Hank fires at them. They call it for backup. Hank and Charlize take off in a street chase.
Yep.
Now we enter into the chase, but the way we would probably write this, it depends if we're cutting. We probably would cut to them driving, and now they're pulling around the corner. We're on the street in Portland. Exterior Portland streets, nights. Hank rounds the corner, followed by the cop car.
And I think we just go into, and then there's a chase.
Yeah. This leads to a cool chase. Nothing too expensive. We've had chases where helicopters have been blown up.
We have.
And we're like, this movie's not that expensive.
But what's really funny is as I was watching Midnight Run, there's a moment where a helicopter turns up in that and crashes.
I mean, I don't know what Midnight Run cost to make back in
it does funny. It doesn't feel expensive. It's interesting. It's interesting.
But it had 2 big stars.
They did have 2 big stars. Yeah, I wonder what the budget was on Midnight Run. I'd be intrigued.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
for when it was like early 90s, I think.
And like you'd have to like then go, well, what would that be?
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
And also what things cost, and
Sure. Yeah.
There was a time. I mean, that helicopter crashing might have been a model.
Budget, totally. It's funny. It didn't look like it. 35 million in 1988.
In the 80s, 35 million was like $100 million movie now, probably.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
If you think about it, like what is a dollar worth from 1988 dollar to 2022?
Yeah.
At inflation.
Yeah.
It's got to be at least double, right? It's got to be at least 70 million.
Let's look. 84 million.
There you go.
In today's dollars.
So,
yeah.
Expensive.
And it's funny. It doesn't feel like an $85 million movie.
But it had 2 big stars and a helicopter crash.
And a helicopter in it. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah, sure. This leads to a cool chase. Nothing too expensive. Yeah. But other cops join in.
Yeah.
Their car is now, burned. Hank's driving, lets them, lose the cops.
Mm-hmm.
But they are on the run now from both Zod and cops.
Yeah.
And from there they're gonna have to find a place to basically ditch the car,
get
a new car, and it's in that where they're gonna have to take her out of the trunk in order to do so.
She's gonna wake up and want to know what the fuck's going on.
So I mean, that can be in an underground parking garage. That could be in an above ground parking garage.
It doesn't even have to be in a parking garage.
It could be in a driveway. It could be in street parking. It could be in the middle of the woods. Types of places where cars are, it could be.
You want to be a place where you keep car. It could be in a used car lot.
Jay Leno's garage.
Jay Leno's garage. Absolutely.
A car dealership. Sorry, we're not going to keep going this direction, but because they do need a new car and they're smart enough, they're not going to just go to like a field or a random cabin.
No, it needs to be somewhere where we
need to switch cars now. They just escaped the cops. They need to be smart. Hank's the demon.
And their car got banged up pretty bad. And,
so I mean, I would say it's probably, we're probably also, by the way, this is probably also, and I'm just going to put this is probably interior, exterior.
Sure.
Hank's car as well.
Yeah.
It's a combination of that, and then we're probably watching Hank's car pull into something. Let's go. Just parking garage for now.
Sure, fine. Yeah. We'll it out.
Night. The car pulls into a dark parking garage.
Right.
And then I think inside the car, now it's parked, interior Hank's car.
Yeah.
Parked. Hank and Charlize argue over what to do next.
Yeah.
And now this is where it gets interesting with outlining. Because this conversation could be a million different things. So what we like to do is at least enough that we're not surprised by the choice that the other writer makes. Sometimes we'll do that on the day. Let's say
we might
writing that scene, we'll have a conversation that morning. What do you think that conversation looks like? And that's okay.
Yeah. And ultimately, in the outline, we might go, his point of view is this, her point of view is this, he wins the argument, or whatever.
Yes.
You know?
So I think based on the fight that they were having at her house, Hank probably still wants to kill her, and Charlize probably is still trying to convince him not to, which is an odd perspective coming from a demon, and we can revisit that argument in a new way that we haven't done before. And Charlize now would probably give Hank the truth over her. I'm an ex-demon. What do you mean? You can't be an ex-demon.
Right.
Well, yes, technically I am still a demon, but I'm not one of them anymore, you know?
We'll visit this, I think, on our next show, because I know you have to get going.
Yes, I do have to end now. You're right. So yeah,
stuff, good dude. This was good. We got through it. We
are fully into Act 2. In fact, that was the first real big moment.
Yeah, it was absolutely.
You know, it was our kind of bridge across Act 1 and Act 2.
Indeed.
So great. Thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Join us again tomorrow, and
see you then.
See you then.
Thanks.